Tonight on EWTN Live, we'll talk about reclaiming the idea of Catholic missions to the poorest of the poor. So please stay with us. Thank you. Thank you very much and welcome. I'm Father Mitch and welcome to EWTN Live, our chance to bring you guests from all over the world. Today is the feast of two saints, Hedwig, who became a queen, and Saint Margaret Mary Alacoque, who became a nun. Saint Hedwig was born in 1174, and though a queen, she very much gave herself to prayer and a commitment to Christ and a commitment to the poor. Whereas St. Margaret Mary was a simple nun in a convent down in southern France at Paray-le-Monial. And she was born in 1647 and lived only to 1690. And our Lord appeared to her and revealed his sacred heart and told her, a cloistered nun, to get this message around the world and to get a feast dedicated to it. But he also gave her many promises for those who would turn to him. And this was a period in the history of French Catholicism when the faith had become cold and distant for a variety of reasons. The spiritual director at the convent was the priest who helped get this message out, himself now a saint, Claude de la Colombière, a Jesuit who was sent to a miserable mission in England, was arrested and got sick and later died because of it. But one of the contacts he made brought the message of the Sacred Heart from St. Margaret Mary through St. Claude to this Duchess, who then brought it to the Pope. And from then on, all of us are called to have that devotion to Jesus Christ's Sacred Heart so that our own relationship with him might be inflamed by the fire of his love. Now, our guest tonight is the head of a Catholic outreach effort that's working in 28 countries worldwide in a little different way than others you may be familiar with. Instead of starting new projects with an influx of cash, supplies, and foreign mission workers, they scout out already successful local projects and partner with local priests, nuns, and social workers to provide what's called integral ministry and development. Here to tell us more about it is the president of Cross Catholic Outreach. Please welcome Mr. Jim Cavnar. Welcome, Jim.
Great to be with you tonight, Father Mitch.
Thank you. Thank you. Very really good to have you. We were talking before the show. I knew your daddy back in Dallas. We both lived there for a number of years, and he did great work himself, and you certainly are doing a wonderful work here. I know that you were one of the very early leaders in the Catholic Charismatic Renewal. And saw you at a number of conferences
The Lord sort of led me into the third world, where I began to see in the true. I think the church, priests and nuns and lay missionaries and others, especially those who are from that country and that culture, know the people, are committed from the heart to care for those who are poor, and are very efficient in their use of aid. Oftentimes, U.S. foreign aid is often criticized for being inefficient or wasteful, or a lot of it goes, to U.S. People, not to the poor overseas. I don't think that's true with the church. I think aid that the church is ministering to the poor is used very efficiently, very effectively. In fact, when you think about how serious the level of poverty is in the developing world, there's at least 1 billion people living on less than $2 a day. You think about that seriousness of it, and you say, what's the most effective way to really make a difference? If you can't wave a magic wand and change everything, what can you do? And I think empowering the local church to touch and change and help the poor is the most effective way.
We've certainly seen that some, generally at the beginning, well-intentioned efforts to change social systems, like Robert Mugabe, down in southern Africa, wanted to make things better for the poor, but those efforts became catastrophes. He tried to socialize the system and spread out the land to the poor and all sorts of things, but it was a catastrophe for the poor, especially. And that's not been my experience of meeting with people who, from the church, serve the poor.
No, I would say that they're much more effective at dealing with people at the intimate, personal level, at the grassroots level, at the family level. I mean, I think there's a call that God has for some people whose mission it is to work at the higher levels of structure, macroeconomic levels, things like that. We need committed Catholics with a vision and a heart for serving the Lord in those positions too. But if you really want to look at the poorest of the poor, at the most desolate communities, at the most hopeless and abandoned, and you really want to see what changes them, that's where I think you see God touching them through the church and through Christian missionaries who reach them and touch them and change their lives. And I've certainly seen that. And that, to me, is what we can all do. We can all participate in that. We can empower those efforts and really make a difference.
How would you characterize, and what would be the great distinguishing characteristics of your organization?
Well, I'd say one of the things is, as you said, working through existing Catholic missions and ministries that are already there, already effective, and just need additional resources to expand and touch more people. Another is our philosophy of long-term commitment and involvement with the missions that we work with. so something lasting can take place.
It's not like, say when the tsunami comes, you bring food and clothes and something and then move on.
Well, disaster relief is something that we get involved in where we have relationships and can help, and it is by definition somewhat short term. But I'm thinking more of the pattern of big foundations and government institutions that typically will fund a project for 3 years and then move on. And I've seen so many empty buildings and abandoned projects all over the world because of that. Whereas we make longer term commitments, like in Ethiopia. We're supporting, I think, at least 7 Catholic schools there. And our project officer once came back from Ethiopia and said, they all said to tell you, thank you for your support, and that Cross is the only one giving them money to operate their schools. They got money from the US or Europe to build them, but we were the only people there year after year to keep the school open. And what good is an empty building? So our philosophy is that long-term involvement to really make a difference.
See, I think that's an extremely important thing that, not only American government, but other governments would have the same problem. One administration comes up with an idea, but they're only in office for 4 years or 8 years, and then they're gone and somebody else comes in with their own project. So this is not, it's another aspect that's not like the government organizations. It's the long-term love of those individuals.
And it's a commitment to see that God can build something on that. In other words, if they know year by year our support will be there. And one of the things that we do is we provide support for their basic operations, because we know that's the hardest money for them to get. They can get money to build something new, launch something new. But once you've got to keep it running and pay salaries and keep your teachers in the classroom and keep your staff able to keep serving the poor, that's one of the things that we do.
Yeah. See, that's right. Now, how many countries do you help out or do you work in?
Last year, there were 28 countries. We distributed between cash support as well as distributions of commodities like food and medicine, a total of about $186 million in aid in 26 countries, 175 different projects.
Yes.
Some of those are countries nearby us in the Caribbean, like Haiti or in Central America. But we have a lot of work in East Africa, the Philippines, Vietnam, a little bit in China, South America. So 28 countries around the world last year, but since we began in 2001, we have had aid distributions in almost 90 countries.
Now, of course, any charitable organization has overhead costs. About what would be yours?
Well, our overhead generally runs 5-6% of our expenses going into overhead.
So that means 94% of what comes in gets to the folks.
Yeah, if you're taking the total contributions, because our contributions take the form both of cash as well as we get donations of food and things like medicines, which are hard for Catholic hospitals to get overseas, very expensive. So altogether, our contributions last year were about $186 million.
Yeah, so that's
a little more than that. I take that back, about $200 million.
Yeah, again, when I was in Peru, they had to, if they got U.S. aid, they could only buy products from U.S. companies. And then, of course, the local politicians had to get their cut. And then the national politicians had to get a cut. So it ended up being something like a third of the money. 2/3 were for overhead.
Yeah.
And you're just dealing with 5-6%.
Yeah.
That shows again, it's the commitment to Christ and the people that underlies this.
That's right. And once you start talking about, government aid, World Bank aid, UN aid, all those large programs, you get into the material dimensions of aid. But that's not the whole solution. In other words, the need of the poor is not just a material need. It's a need of the entire person. It's a spiritual need as well. And that's where the church does what no other institution can do. The church is addressing not only the material need, but the spiritual need of the people. And that's, you used the term earlier, that's what the Catholic Church calls integral ministry or integral development. The term coming meaning the integral good or the entire good of the human person. That's what's unique. Catholic charity is driven by love of the individual, by love of God, and a concern for the entire person. Yeah. And that's why it's different, and in my experience, that's also why it's more effective.
Yeah. Certainly, a good deal of aid, especially for the last 6 years. I mean, President Obama has been very, very strong on making sure that American aid is tied to abortion rights and contraception, sterilization, and also getting what they call the sort of the new ethics.
Yeah, the new global ethic. Yeah. Last January, I was in Rome for an international conference of Catholic charities, and this was the topic, was charity and the new global ethic, by which they meant that things that sound like kind of valid ethical principles for human rights and justice and things like that are used by big international institutions like the UN and others to promote something very antithetical, to Catholic teaching. For example, you hear something like reproductive health, and you think, well, good, women need to have good medical care.
Because in the third world, one of the problems is a lot of babies die
in childbirth,
or soon after.
Soon after, yeah.
And a lot of women also.
But now, reproductive health means guaranteed abortion and contraception. Or you hear
make sure there are no babies, or kill them if they are there.
Yeah, less of them. Then you have something, like right to life. And you say, well, that sounds good. Yeah. What could be wrong with that? Right. But it's been redefined by a lot of these major secular institutions to mean a right to a certain kind of life. And therefore, it has, by necessity, has to involve abortion and euthanasia to guarantee a certain quality of life to people. Or you take something like gender equality, which used to mean that we're concerned about countries where the tradition is they don't educate girls, only the boys.
Like that one young woman who was a candidate for the Nobel Peace Prize, who was shot because she was for education. Yeah. That's usually what I would think.
Yeah, but now it's redefined to mean a guarantee for homosexual marriage, gay rights, because now it's gender equality. All genders have to be treated equally. What happens is that governments in these countries, particularly in Africa, to get the development aid that they really do need from these large institutions, find themselves pressured to accept and protect policies which are antithetical to their culture and to Christian teaching. Even Catholic institutions in these countries, the Catholic Church and Catholic charities, get pressured in that same direction. And that's one thing that you obviously wouldn't find with us. I mean, obviously we're not going to take that kind of approach, but it is a dynamic which is affecting international aid coming from these large international institutions.
I don't know if you see many Americans and Europeans going into the missions themselves these days. How is that situation from what your experience?
Yeah, I mean, there are many Americans and Europeans, still in the missions, but the numbers have been dwindling. I mean, the vocations to religious orders have been less in the last few decades. Mm-hmm. I noticed it particularly, for example, in Zambia. When I first visited Zambia in 2003, the Franciscans, 75 years before, had really created the Catholic Church in Zambia. Most of the churches were raised up and staffed by Franciscans. Well, now the missionaries from Europe and the U.S. were getting aged in their late 70s and 80s and beyond and retiring. But they had successfully raised up Zambian priests and Zambian sisters and empowered Zambian lay people who were working, in this case, to help the poor. But they don't have those connections. They're not backed by an organization in the U.S. That's where we come in. We find those people that are doing great work helping the poor. And it's phenomenal how little money it takes to truly transform lives.
Especially in a country like Zambia and many other countries throughout Africa. $5 can support a priest or a nun or a social worker quite well, and comfortably. And just does tremendous good for their ministry. But like you say, if they don't have the folks from the richer nations helping them, they're eking it out the best they can.
Yeah, take the example of Zambia. I met a laywoman and a nun from Italy, in fact. Between the two of them, with the backing from the local Franciscans, they had begun a ministry in the slums around the Kitwe, Zambia. They were caring for 730 people dying of AIDS, so ill that they needed care but had been kicked out of their houses because of the fear.
Yeah, people are afraid that if they're around AIDS patients, they'll get AIDS.
Yeah. They were caring for 2,400 others through their free medical clinics. They did it all with all volunteers. The laywoman was a nurse who had a full-time job. This was her extra work, her volunteer work. With all volunteers, they are caring for these people and mobilizing volunteers, to go to the home of the person dying of AIDS who needs help, needs someone to just get food for him, bring him food, take care of washing his bed, things like that. And I said, well, can we help? And they said, yeah, they need medicines, they need food to buy. We don't have any money. Well, we started, with $6,000 a month to help them get going, and we've continued to support it. But that's all it took for them to continue providing medical care for 2,400 extremely poor people in slums and over 700 people dying of AIDS with no one to look after them.
Right.
The will was there, the love was there, the commitment was there. They just needed some resources.
One of the things I recall being discussed, again, back before and after I went to Peru, was a concern that if Europeans, Americans, and other first world people go to the missions in these countries, they are going to be imposing Western ways. They're part of an imperialistic intrusion, and they're trying to make these folks into be like us. But, oddly, it seems to me that the governments who impose same-sex unions, abortion, and contraception are imposing deadly and dangerous or immoral behaviors that are contrary to their culture. Well, the missionaries don't seem to be doing that at all, from what you describe.
No, I would say I haven't seen that. I mean, perhaps there were problems in some previous eras, but certainly not in the modern era.
Yeah.
I mean, if you say, well, we're imposing American-style medical care upon a poor country with a 20% infant mortality rate, they're begging for American-style medical care to help them keep their children alive.
You mean because it works?
Because it works.
At least as it used to be.
Yeah. And besides, nowadays, so much of this work is being done by local people. It's not like it's all done by imports from the U.S. or Western Europe. It's local people reaching out for help. I think of things that we've done in the Philippines, rebuilding the slums of the Philippines through an organization created by a local movement called Couples for Christ, which helped bring together married couples in small groups, spread all over the world, and they decided they need to help the poor, and they picked the worst slums in the Philippines to go in and help them. Those are 100% Filipinos. They're doing it. They're committed to it. They were at the stage working with the slum they were in when it's time to kind of help them build houses. They had no money, and one of our project officers happened to be in the Philippines, got introduced. You know how the Holy Spirit works sometimes.
Sure.
And we provided it. I found out later in talking to the head of the group, we had been praying that God would send somebody to provide the funds because we didn't have it. And the next day we met Mike, and well, we've had a 10-year relationship with them now, and they've built hundreds of homes and transformed the lives of thousands of individuals.
And I think, what you're describing, it says to me how important it is to give our charitable money to Catholic organizations like yours, Cross Catholic, so that it does get to the poor. It does so in a moral, Catholic way, and so that people also get re-inspired to do mission in these other countries, and as volunteers and in various ways, as well as cooperating. And I find that very encouraging.
Yeah, and we need it too. James says in his letter, God has made the poor rich in faith and heirs of the kingdom of heaven. We have material riches in this country, in our church. We may not think we're rich, but I tell you, compared to a family trying to live on $1 or $2 a day, we're very wealthy. We have the material, but James is right. God has made the poor rich in faith. We have so much that we can benefit from that contact, that ministry to the poor. And that's the role we try to play, as a bridge that goes two ways, to facilitate Americans being able to help the church overseas, minister to the poor effectively, and at the same time enable Americans in the U.S. to benefit from the faith of the poor and the inspiration of their love and commitment to Christ.
Yeah, I think that's a very important element of our mission as Catholics, to see that you really do learn a lot from the poor people you meet. And we have people in our country who do suffer, and there's some who are hungry. But in general, what we call poor would be middle class in some parts of Zambia and other places. The idea of having air conditioning and a large screen TV that some of our poor have would never be the case over there.
Well, just take something simple like anyone in the U.S., even if you're homeless, can find water to drink that won't make you sick or kill you, can find a toilet, and can, if they get sick, can walk into an ER in the country and by law be treated with the top medical care in the world.
Right.
You go into a poor country, there may be no safe water. Like in Haiti, the #1 cause of infant mortality is contaminated water, and that's just one example. It's true all over the world. There are parts of Haiti where infant mortality, death before age 5, is as high as 13% because of the lack of safe water to drink.
Right.
That's true everywhere.
Right.
Sanitation, that's just not true. There are so many places where there aren't even outhouses. So you get wells contaminated and things like that. And medical care, I've been at hospitals in Haiti, for example, where the doctor will give someone a prescription, but there's no medicines whatsoever in the hospital. The parent of the child or the adult has to go out, find the money, and buy the medication and bring it back. I actually have talked to medical directors of hospitals that say we have 0 medications in our hospital because they can't afford anything.
Right.
So what we take for granted in the U.S. that the poorest person in the U.S. could expect is, you're right, it's middle class and above in a developing country.
Exactly. We want to let you find out more information about Cross Catholic Outreach. You can go to their website, which is www.crosscatholic.org. Or you can also call 1-800-914-2420. And we're going to take a break. We'll come back in about 2 minutes. I want to get your questions and questions from our studio audience, so please stay with us. Thank you. Thank you very much. We have a couple of wonderful groups and a variety of individuals who have come here today from different parts of the country. And we'd love to have you come and join us as well. If you can, please contact our pilgrimage department at 205-271-2966. Or if you get it, if you go on the internet, EWTN.com, and they'll give you all kind of information about scheduling of programs, of the masses, tours of the studios, information on how to get up to Hansville, places to stay, places to eat. Now, who all's from Pennsylvania? Have you had any fried green tomatoes yet? Oh, you got to get some of those. You're in Alabama now. Come on. And some grits with your breakfast. All right, you ready for some questions?
I'm ready.
All right, let's get it up. We have Linda on the line. Hello, Linda.
Yes, Father.
Where are you
Cavnar,
from?
Thank you, Linda, St. Louis, Missouri.
Great.
I have two questions. One, quickie. Is it true that if I write you a personal check, you gain more of that dollar than if we pay a middleman through PayPal or a credit card? That's a quick question. My more interesting question, although I think I've inferred the answer, would you be explicit in naming those factors that allow you to give such a high percent of our dollar to the least of our brethren? And I'll hang up now. Thank you, gentlemen. Peace.
All right. So does it matter if you get paid by PayPal or a donation comes in by check?
Well, Linda is correct that there is a charge when somebody gives to us by credit card.
Yes.
The credit card company gets 2-3% of that. Mm-hmm. PayPal is similar.
Okay.
So yes, there is a small charge, but the convenience of being able to make gifts online and things like that is more than worth it. So I wouldn't want anybody to feel like they shouldn't make a gift in the most convenient fashion. And our website, is a way that you can make a gift and buy credit card and PayPal, and that works really well. Okay. Now, the second question, what are the factors that contribute to keeping our overhead low? I'd say the big factor is the fact that our contributions and our distribution of aid is so high because we get a lot of it donated. Instead of having to buy it with cash, we get it donated. For example, last year we shipped $180 million worth of food and medicine and other commodities. It cost us a little less than $900,000. So for every dollar someone donated that was used to ship, $200 in aid were delivered. So in other words, there's an enormous efficiency when you can operate at that kind of a level. Sure. And that's what I would say is the single most important factor of why we can keep our overhead low, because of that efficiency of being able to get so much of the aid donated if we have the money to ship it.
So there are companies or individuals who give you, say, the medicine or the food.
We get almost all of our donated goods, surprisingly, from other charities. And here's why. A big pharmaceutical company, like Pfizer or somebody, they don't want to deal with 10,000 charities asking for donated medicines. So they'll give it to one or two, and then they will distribute it to people like us who can put it to work in the field.
Right.
So there's a whole network of these. And we've gotten a very good reputation for sending only things that are really appropriate, that really meet the need. We've gotten a very good reputation for accountability. We try to do that with all of our contributions, whether cash or commodities. Be very accountable, give reports back. Our donors often tell us they get the best reports from us they get from any charities they donate to, because we really try hard to do that well so that donors can see the impact that their gifts are having. Sure. And so we emphasize that as well.
Okay. You have a question from our studio audience. Ma'am, where are you from?
I am from Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania.
Good to have you here, and your question.
Yes, my question is, what country or countries do you find it most difficult to reach the poorest of the poor?
Well, let's say that in order to distribute aid, what's the most difficult? I would pick probably Haiti as the most difficult.
Why would that be?
Two factors. One is it's very difficult to ship commodities into Haiti. It cost us more to ship a 40-foot shipping container, the back end of a semi. It cost us more to ship that to Haiti, which is only, an hour and a half flight from Miami, than to ship that same container to landlocked Zambia, where it's got to go to Durban, South Africa, and be trucked 1,100 miles overland, because the government makes importation of charitable goods so difficult. We're good at it, we get it done cheaply, but it's still very expensive, and it's harder to do in Haiti than almost anywhere. The second factor is the poor infrastructure. If you're trying to distribute aid in a country and communicate with people, if you're in a country where the roads are poor, electricity is unreliable and is not available to many people, telephone systems often aren't working, the poor infrastructure makes it difficult, just difficult to get anywhere to do things. And we don't think about that much in the U.S. The other country I would pick out, the second most expensive and difficult place for us to ship aid is Kenya. And it's the same thing. In both of these countries, it really sort of boils down to kind of government corruption and inefficiency that create obstacles.
So that these taxes are, basically, the government getting their cut.
In effect,
before the poor get it.
Yeah.
So that's not any different than what I saw in Peru.
Yeah, right, exactly. Now, in terms of do governments interfere with what we're doing? No. I mean, we don't have governments blocking us helping the poor or trying to prevent it. Now, sometimes you might have government politicians trying to take credit for it, get a little political advantage, and so trying to remain free of that, yes.
Would that be true?
Yeah. I mean,
politicians take credit for something they don't do?
Yeah. Well, now,
unheard
now,
of.
Father Mitch, this is foreign countries, of course.
Oh, yeah. That's what I...
Yeah, but that's one of the reasons we don't work through government. We work through the church. We work through churches and church-based ministries that directly help the poor. You have far, far, far less corruption and difficulties of that kind, and you don't have that manipulation.
All right. We have another caller. Hello, Jane?
Yeah.
Hi, where are you from?
From Rochester, New York.
Great. Good to hear from you. And what is your question?
Well, when I make a donation at Christmas time to a charity, I like my children to know who they're giving to and what it's going to be used for. Is there a possibility that a donation can be directed to a certain country and for a definite purpose?
Okay, good question. Thank you, Jane.
Yeah, Jane, I agree. That's a very good question. In fact, when Cross started, a major donor called me up who had heard that we were starting this and said, "Can I help?" And he made a $35,000 gift, and then he said, Jim, I trust you, and I'm sure it'll be put to good use, but to tell the truth, I support a lot of charities, and I always feel like my money goes into a black hole. I never know how it's used. So when Cross started, we really wanted to change that. So we can track gifts. So if someone says, I want a gift, I want it to go to Haiti, we can do that. It's done through what are called restricted funds. We have specific funds that we can book the gift into, and then as money is spent in Haiti or for water projects in the world or for food or for housing or whatever the person wants it to go to, as the money is spent, it comes out of that fund so we can track it. So yes, we're able to to respond to those kind of requests, and we try very hard to make that a distinctive part of our ministry.
Yeah, so that somebody can go to crosscatholic.org and they can select the project right at the website.
We have a project catalog on our website, and at any given time, there's a large numbers there, not all of them, but many, and you can give to a specific project and your money goes to that one. In fact, we watch it carefully, and when it's fully funded, we brand it funded and don't accept any more donations to make sure that we're observing the donor's request. And so there are a lot of projects there that a person like Jane could go there, say at Christmas time, find one, print out the full proposal from the website, because there's always a nice proposal with photos and full description, make a gift, get back a letter that thanks them for the gift to that project, and and know where their gift is going. So yes, you can do that.
And she mentioned that she wants the children and I guess grandchildren to know where it's going, especially for younger children. This could be a great opportunity then to say, all right, we gave this money to, say, Zambia or Haiti. Let's study something about that country's overall situation, its problems, its strengths, etc. So this can be learning on a number of different levels.
Yeah, and on our website, we often have information of that kind, but you're right, because in printing out that project proposal, looking at all the details, they're going to learn something about the country,
yes,
about the particular church ministry that's carrying it out and who they are, and they're going to learn about some of the individuals who are helped. Usually there's some stories of some of the people who have need and who will be helped.
Oh, that's excellent.
To make it real, the kind of need that there is. So yeah, that could be used exactly as you described.
All right. Let's get another call from Pat. Hello, Pat.
Hi, Father. Thanks very much for taking the call.
Sure. Where are you from?
I also grew up in Rochester, New York. Went to McQuaid Jesuit High School.
Good for you.
And appreciated very much the tradition of the Jesuits. And I do have a question about this program. Down here in Clearwater, where I now live, we're collecting for the Mission Sunday this coming Sunday. And I was wondering how this organization is funded through the propagation of the faith. I'll hang up now, and thank you very much for all of your help.
Thank you, Pat. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. I agree with you about that Jesuit education. I had that myself and benefited a lot. Now, I can't end there. I have to say I also got educated at Notre Dame by the Holy Cross Fathers. So
who are also doing
great
work.
Shout out to the Holy Cross Fathers.
Right.
Equal time, shall we say.
Yeah, that's right. As a matter of fact, we had, they sent some of the boys up here to learn how to play football from Alabama.
Sometimes I think they need that, yes. Well, anyway, Mission Sunday collections and the propagation of the faith, we are not funded through them, and we are separate from them. However, we very much encourage people to be very generous on Mission Sunday and the propagation of the faith. Mm-hmm. But we're a separate lay organization, within the church. We're an official Catholic organization in the Diocese of Palm Beach, Florida. We have 7 bishops on our board of directors. Our chairman is Archbishop Thomas Rhodey of Mobile, Alabama.
Right.
Cardinal O'Brien is our official patron, and we have a formal collaboration with the Vatican's, the Holy Father's charity, which is called Pontifical Council Cor Unum, and we work with them and help them and provide funding for them to reach out around the world too. So we're a lay Catholic organization, carrying out that ministry. And we certainly encourage people to back all those other organizations, not only Propagation of the Faith and Mission Sunday, but my call is for every Catholic to hear the word of the gospel, to know that Jesus is saying, whatever you do for the poor, you do for him, and to get behind the missions of the church overseas, whether it's through Cross Catholic or through the Franciscan Mission Association or whatever it is, Propagation of Faith. All of these are ways that we reach out and touch, and all of them have needs.
We have another caller. Hello, Marge. Marge, you there? I guess we don't have her. No, but the lady that was going to ask a question that's related to what you just said, she wanted to know, how do you know which Catholic organization to give to? Because again, overall, church organizations are getting the goods to the poor far more efficiently than any government does. So which one do you give to? There are a lot.
Yeah. I think the answer is you should pray. You should ask the Holy Spirit to guide you into what does God want me to do. I know we talk with many of our donors, particularly our larger donors, and get to know them. And I see that a lot in those donors. They will describe how they came across Cross Catholic and how they really felt it was the Lord leading them, and how much God has blessed them through that contact and through that. And so I really see it as the kind of thing that a person should pray and ask the Lord. You should do your due diligence, you know. Some people are very interested in particular kinds of ways of helping the poor, maybe education or maybe building houses. And you might find one ministry is strong at that. But of course you want to look and see, you know, are they responsible? Are they endorsed by the bishops? Things like that.
Sure.
Just make sure it's legitimate. Make sure it's legitimate. Yeah. But in the bottom line, I'd say pray. The Holy Spirit will lead you.
We also have Maria on the line. Hello, Maria.
Hi. Good evening, Father.
Good evening. Where are you from?
I'm from Maryland, but originally from Argentina.
Oh, great. Great. Yes. Thanks for your Pope.
Yes, we're very happy.
We appreciate the gift.
Very excited that he's a Jesuit like you. And thank you for your program. I follow it every Wednesday with my husband here. I just have a question, and I want to thank your guest for all he does. Is wonderful. And I wonder if he if the organization accepts volunteers on a temporary or permanent basis, and whether they take physicians or healthcare workers, or what kind of volunteers.
Oh, thank you. That's a very good question, Maria.
We are not a volunteer agency in the way that Maria is talking about. We do have parishes who work with us and send teams overseas to do short-term volunteer. But the kind of thing that she's discussing, perhaps a group of doctors or nurses going for either a short-term or a longer-term volunteer, we don't place them. However, we do know many missions overseas, you know, that use volunteers regularly, and we can put people who inquire in direct touch and help them, or put them in touch with organizations that can place and organize that. But we ourselves don't organize them on our own, other than church groups. And we do take donors in small groups to visit the missions that they support and other missions. They do a little bit of volunteer work, but not exactly the way that she was talking about. So,
right.
But we're happy to do what we can to steer them in the right direction.
Yeah, that would be something that would be a good way to help, because there are a lot of medical volunteers who are nervous about doing so in the United States because of fear of different states' laws and things like that. But in the third world, you know, any kind of medical help is really welcomed.
Yeah.
And they don't have lawyers that will sue you as readily as here. And so a lot of medical people and dentists, optometrists, all go to other countries.
Yeah, you're right about that. On the other hand, the really good agencies that use volunteers effectively also do a good job of screening to be sure they're getting professional, certified doctors and nurses, and not quacks or people pretending. So that's important too.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and that's done by the kind of people that will refer people to. They do that kind of due diligence to see that the poor are really being cared for by competent people. And I can tell you that there are missions in Haiti, that's a close one, and it's easier for Americans to get there than, say, to go to Kenya. But there are missions in Haiti that have very effective ministries to the poor by dentists, by American doctors.
Yes.
They don't have a full-time medical clinic year-round, but they do enough specialty clinics that they can prepare, let's say, people who need significant dental work, have them ready so that when the dental team comes in, they can be very effective and productive and really make a difference. So, specialized volunteers with those kind of those skills can be very helpful.
Absolutely. And you know, one of the things we didn't really discuss much, but in the last couple of minutes, tell us a little bit about what you mean by integrated mission. What is that?
Integral development relates to the new evangelization, or to evangelization, in that it's an attempt to address the entire good of the person, spiritual as well as material. Now, sometimes it's a mission that, say, runs a school. Children are being educated to be Catholics. They're hearing the gospel. They have outreaches to preach the gospel. They have catechists who are doing all that. Our aid enables them to meet the material needs of people, which means it gives credibility to the preaching of the gospel. It makes the preaching of the gospel accompanied by tangible acts of love and concern, empowered by the resources to do more that we can provide. That gives credibility to preaching the gospel. So that's one way that you see missions overseas, both carrying on their mission of evangelization, education of youth, formation, sacramental preparation, all of that. A charitable outreach is the natural expression of that love of the person. And then there's also cases where, like, let's take that ministry I referred to in the Philippines, where they're transforming slums. They first begin by meeting the people in the slums, meeting the families, bringing them together, talking with them, counseling them, helping them to deal with issues of addictions and marital conflict and poor child raising, and helping them with literacy and training. They create programs for children, and all of these involve prayer and the sharing of the gospel. They have retreats that they make available. And then part of what they're doing is also providing medical care to meet their needs and eventually building them a new house. But in other words, the hearing about the Lord and the spiritual transformation that comes to many that way, accompanied by the material transformation, means you've transformed not only the material appearance of the slum, but the social interactions. You've created community based upon the Lord and prayer. And that I've been in slums there that look like they were built last month, and they're already 5 years old. The slum dwellers used to live in shacks, ramshackle, dirty, filthy. Today they live in beautifully painted, colorful houses with brick streets. And they keep it up because not only has their material environment changed, but they've changed. And that's been done by Catholic laymen and women going in and working with them and meeting them, interacting with them, sharing the love of God with them, praying with them, and that's changed. So that's two kinds of way the integral development sometimes gets expressed. On the one hand, the charitable action gives credibility to the preaching of the gospel. And other times, the transformation of community involves the spiritual transformation of people as well as the material.
You know, when you see, like you're describing, that for the Philippines, you have people who would be already Christian, but, letting their faith, come deeply within and not let the problems overwhelm them. This is where Christ really does something that then has this outside effect.
Yeah.
That our Lord is just, different ways of doing this. I want to make sure we give the folks information at least one more time so they can find out more about Cross Catholic Outreach. And just go to crosscatholic.org. And they have a phone number also, 1-800-914-2420. And, this way, if we got folks who do want to volunteer, someplace can do that, want to help with giving donations or whatever else they want to do, they can learn more about it. I want to thank you for being with us. We've run out of time.
My pleasure, and thank you so much for having me.
Great to do so.
Having me. I really enjoyed the time with you, Father.
And we give you a blessing. The Lord bless you and keep you and cause His face to shine upon you. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And,
Amen.
So much what we do in the church, helping the poor, or doing the kind of work we do here in preaching the gospel through this medium, depends on you. And so we also look for your help and support to keep us in between your gas bill, your electric bill, and your cable bill, because we have a lot of bills that we have to pay too. So we appreciate the support you give, and hopefully we can keep bringing the good news. Thank you.